Hi, Teri here from Stamping Magic. Welcome back to my channel. Today's projects are these cards. I've used the Power of Hope stamp set and the Stone 3D embossing folder. These two products come as a bundle and they are completely free during our Celebration promotion with a qualifying purchase. You can find full details about this promotion on my blog. Now these cards are slightly different to each other. I've used the Faux Silk Technique, but each card uses a different method of doing this. So let's get started. These are all the measurements you need for all the elements required to create this project. So if you are interested in reproducing it, you can take a screenshot and refer to it later. For the first method, you need a good size piece of tissue paper that you can stamp on. Now this is normal tissue paper that you would use for wrapping a present or a gift. I'm going to stamp using Memento Tuxedo black ink because I'm going to colour using the Stampin' Blends alcohol markers. This is the Power of Hope stamp set and I'm using 3 of the images today and 1 of the sentiments. I'm going to stamp the lady first towards the left hand side, and then I'm going to stamp 2 of the lanterns on the right hand side. Now you will get a lot of bleed through because we're stamping on tissue paper, so you need to be aware of that as we go. I'm starting with the ivory marker to colour the little bit of skin that's showing. Then I'm switching to the light and dark grey granite and I'm going to colour the hair. First with the light and then just add a little depth with the dark. I'm also going to use the dark on the belt and the top and the bottom of the lanterns. And you'll notice that as I colour each part, I move the tissue paper so it's not sat in a pool of wet ink. I've just zoomed you in a little here. Now I've switched to Call Me Clover and I've coloured the lanterns. This is in the light. And then I can change to the dark and just highlight certain areas. Now it is possible to blend on the tissue paper, but it's not as good as if you were using normal card. Right, now I'm going to use the light Daffodil Delight to colour all of the parasol before again highlighting areas or adding depth with the dark, and then I'll blend this with the light marker. I'm going to switch back to the dark grey granite next and go over the areas that I first coloured with it, just to make them a little deeper, and then I'm going to add a little shadow with the light underneath where she's standing. I'm going to use my Seaside Spray ink pad and a sponge dauber to apply some colour to the background. Now I don't want this to be an even blend by any means. I want it to be a little mottled to add some interest to the background. Finally, I'm going to use my Tombow Mono drawing pen and a ruler just to draw in some black wires for the lanterns to hang from. For the second method for this technique, I'm starting with the piece of scrap Whisper White card. I'm going to stamp my lady again towards the left hand side, and then I'll stamp 2 lanterns towards the top right. The colouring will be exactly the same as I did on the tissue paper, but I'll be able to do a little more blending on the card. Now I've started by colouring the skin with ivory, then I've switched to the light and dark granite to colour the hair, the belt and the top and the bottom of the lanterns. I'm now using light Call Me Clover for the lanterns and the dress. Then I'll switch to the dark and just add some depth to certain areas. Then I can blend the two tones together using the light. Light Daffodil Delight first on the parasol, and then I will add a little of the dark before blending together with the light. Then I can draw my lines. Again, I'm using Seaside Spray ink and my sponge dauber just to add a little colour into the background. I'm going to stamp my sentiment onto some scraps of Whisper White card. I'm inking using Memento Tuxedo black ink, and I'm using my stamp artist because I know that I'll need to stamp this twice for each one. I'll die cut these using the smallest of the rectangle stitched dies. I'm going to stamp the inside mats next, and I'm just going to stamp these with the little bonsai tree. Then I'm going to colour using my dark soft suede marker and the light and dark Call Me Clover markers. I've got all the bits required for each of the two cards here. Now the Call Me Clover scallop circle mats I've cut out using the largest scallop circle from the Layering Circles set. Then I've used the largest of the plain circles from the same set to cut out a Whisper White circle, and I'll also use it to cut out the panel I coloured onto card. I've cut out my panel and I'm now going to apply the Faux Silk Technique. Now you want to have glue, and I'm just squirting some of my multi-purpose adhesive into a palette tray, and I'm going to use a little brush to apply it all over my image. And you want to try and get an even coat all over. Make sure you cover the edges. Then I have an additional piece of clean tissue paper, and I'm going to scrunch it up and get as many creases into it as I can before carefully opening it out, and then I'm going to apply it to my panel. Now you don't want to smooth it on, you just want to tap it on because you want to retain as many of those little creases as you can. Make sure you press it right into the edges. Now, before I do anything else with this, I'm going to let it dry fully. Now for the other method. Now you've got your clean white circle and you've got your panel that you've coloured onto tissue paper. I'm using a dark background for this so I can see the edges of my circle. Again, you want to use some glue. You could use a glue stick, they work really well for this technique. I'm going to carefully scrunch up my panel and then open it out again. And you can see when I hold it over my circle, because I've got that dark background, I can see where to place my images. Now, first of all, I'm going to cover my circle with the multi-purpose adhesive, taking it right to the edges. And then I can carefully line up my image against that circle and press it down into the glue. Again, make sure all the edges are connected. The tissue paper is very fragile when it's wet, so make sure it's completely dry before you proceed. The first thing I'm going to do is just cut off all the excess tissue from each of the panels. Then I can flip each of the panels over and just cut round the circles. If these panels were square or rectangular in shape, then I wouldn't do this. Instead, I'd glue the excess onto the back because that would give you a neater edge on the front. I've gone ahead and added these to the Call Me Clover scallop circles, and I've also added dimensionals to the reverse. And now you can see the difference you get with the two methods. The one on the right is much more vibrant and brighter in colour than the one on the left, which is much more muted. I'm using grey granite mats for the background panels, and I've already gone ahead and embossed these using the Stone 3D embossing folder. Now I'm going to add a little distressing just using the grey granite ink pad and my sponge dauber, very old sponge dauber. I'm picking up some of the ink with the dauber and then I'm just rubbing this lightly across the top of the cardstock, and the ink will catch on all the raised areas. I want to make my corners a little bit darker than the rest of the mat, and I'll just continue until I'm happy with how it looks. I'm going to use a card base in Call Me Clover, and this is just half a sheet of your standard cardstock scored in the middle and folded. I'm going to add the embossed panel first of all to the front of the card. And then I'm going to add the inside mat. I can now remove the backings from the dimensionals on my image panel and position that towards the top left of the card. And then I can position the sentiment panel towards the bottom right of the card. And I've put the second card together in exactly the same way. And that's it, both cards are now complete. A very quick and simple card to produce, but showcasing a lovely technique that you don't see that often, and now you know two different ways of doing it. Now I do prefer the one on the right. I like the more vibrant colours. I think the method used for the one on the left would be better for perhaps a background panel. Here's my original cards again. I coloured these using Poppy Parade. Everything else is the same. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Bye for now.